For 7 years, Republican lawmakers promised that given the chance, they would destroy Obamacare. But when it came down to it, House leaders walked away without even putting their repeal and replace plan to a vote. Republicans could not get all of their own party to agree on the legislation, let alone Democrats. So what went wrong? I'm joined now by Avik Roy. He's a senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute and former healthcare policy advisor for Mitt Romney. Avik, thanks so much for coming on. I'm wondering what your thoughts are as you assess the situation. Where did the leadership fail?
Hey, Anna. So I wrote a piece for Forbes today about this, that it's really, Paul Ryan, yesterday in his press conference, he said that Republicans were having growing pains, that Republicans were trying to figure out how to be a governing party. And what he meant was the House Freedom Caucus and other right-wingers were the problem, that they were too used to being an opposition party. But I would argue, and I wrote in this piece, that it's actually Paul Ryan who isn't really used to running a governing party. And this process from the beginning to the end was pretty shambolic.
So you believe it was Ryan's fault?
Yeah, I mean, he really didn't, when you do this kind of stuff, and by the way, if you look back on how Nancy Pelosi and Barack Obama led the process that led to what we call Obamacare in 2009, 2010, they took about a year to have a lot of hearings. They even invited a lot of Republicans like Paul Ryan to chip in with their views as to how this plan should develop. Senate Democrats engaged with Republicans, even though Democrats controlled 59 and ultimately 60 seats in the Senate. You compare that to this process where a bill drops on a Monday evening and Republicans are expected within 16 days, to decide whether they like this bill or not, receive threats from the president that they're being disloyal if they don't like it. A bill that's going to affect 1/6 of the economy, cut about $1 trillion in spending. I mean, this process really was a bit of a mess. And again, that really goes to Paul Ryan because he didn't develop the consensus. He didn't try to forge agreement among the different parties. And he could have. As we got to the end of this past week, the House Freedom Caucus and the moderates were coming together on what a compromise could look like. But the president and Paul Ryan decided to pull the plug. They were sick of it. They wanted to go to tax reform. And here we are.
How could he have made a better case to get other Republicans on the same page?
He needed to move on two fronts. One, to attract the moderates, he needed to adjust the system of tax credits in his bill so that lower-income people, particularly lower-income people in their 50s and 60s, would not lose their health insurance. In fact, would perhaps get more attractive health insurance than they do today under the Affordable Care Act. That's what moderates really needed. And what the House Freedom Caucus settled on as their goal was to reduce some of the regulations in Obamacare that make premiums so expensive on Obamacare's insurance exchanges. Both of those goals could have been achieved in a reform bill, but Paul Ryan really didn't want to do that because the system that he put in, the American Health Care Act, he didn't really want to change it enough to adjust to, and accommodate those goals. And so he just threw up his hands and said, you know what, I'm done with this, let's move to tax reform. And that makes no sense because there was a substantive change that could have actually led to a bill that would have improved health care for a lot of people.
Could the president have done anything differently? Do you think he should shoulder any of the burden on this?
Yeah, I think, where the president fell short is he outsourced this important policy agenda to Paul Ryan. President Trump actually disagrees with Paul Ryan on health care. President Trump believes that everyone should have health insurance and the government should pay for it for the people who need the help. Paul Ryan actually doesn't agree with that. He thinks that universal coverage equals big government, that involves too much spending, too much government involvement in the health care system. So when the president said, okay, Paul Ryan, you develop the bill and I'll back you, that was his mistake. He should have had people in the White House develop a plan that reflects President Trump's principles and had Paul Ryan try to work with that as a way to build consensus in Congress. And that didn't happen.
All right, Avik Roy, we'll see where it goes. Maybe they're listening. We'll take some of your advice moving forward. We appreciate your time tonight.
Thanks, Anna.